Things you didn't know about ground reaction forces. I'm bringing you this video today, discuss with you, demonstrate to you the key and essential ground reaction forces that will help you move in the golf swing. So ground reaction forces, Newton's third law. We push into the ground, we get that equal and opposite reaction. Ground reaction forces, force precedes our motion. We have two connections in the golf swing. We have a connection to the ground, our feet, and we have a connection to the handle, our grip. So therefore, we can produce force at the level of our feet, and we can produce force at the handle. Essentially, that force will help us, the body above the ground, move, and in the club, if we're applying force to the handle, help that golf club move around our body and help us deliver it to the golf ball. So ground reaction forces, over 2 decades of study that I've had in this particular field, and I'm going to bring to you my knowledge and wisdom to you today in this video. So I'm going to use 2 training aids that I have on a daily basis in my studio just to help my pupils understand ground reaction forces and the foot action force, the pushing direction through the ground, through my feet, that's going to help me move above the ground. So this clock card is a creation that I made during COVID, and I was using this. It was actually a cereal box that I drew a clock face, got a cereal bowl, drew a clock face on the cereal box. I used the shiny side of the cereal box, and that was the slippery one with minimal friction that it would move around, so I could grip it with my foot onto the card and I could move it around. I used that during COVID lockdown, and it was great to explain and demonstrate the foot action forces. I'm also going to use this little blue disc. Now this is going to represent my center of mass. Now center of mass is where there is equal, it's the position of your body, the position in your body, that there's equal mass above it, below it, and either side of it, okay? Essentially, if I balance an object, if I balance this disc on my finger, I'm effectively balancing it below. My finger is below its center of mass, directly below it there, and it's sitting right there. So that essentially is the point of rotation that a free-bodied object moves around. It creates rotation around. So I'm going to explain a little bit about that. So let's start off with the 3 main forces that we create in the ground and their benefits. What do they aid us with? What are they going to do in the golf swing? How important? So first is the lateral force, medial-lateral force. So I'm going to put this clock card down so you can see, and I'm going to push in a direction. So this is underneath my trail foot. I'm going to push in a direction towards 3 o'clock, and that board is going to slide. So the ground reaction force is going to be towards 9 o'clock. So that essentially, that medial lateral force demonstrated underneath just my trail. Of course, in the downswing, there's going to be quite a bit of medial lateral force going in this direction as well towards the target, more towards 11 o'clock-ish, towards the target and towards the camera somewhat, which is going to help me move. But essentially, that medial lateral force is the force that helps you sway side to side, drifting, swaying side to side. It also helps you move your body and rotate your body or create torque, okay? So if I hold this disc in this position here, I want you to imagine I'm kind of like a Ferris wheel here, and this is turning the middle of the Ferris wheel, and as I do this, you can see that my body is side tilting. So this medial lateral force also helps me side tilt. Now let me explain a little bit more. If I push in that direction, the ground reaction force is going to have an effect in this direction. The reaction is there. If this arrow points away from the center of this disc, so it starts pointing down this direction, away from my center of mass, I am going to be moving. It's going to increase or aid my ability to side tilt. So we've got sway ability and we've got side tilting ability, all from medial lateral force. Now, the magnitude or peak value, the amount that we create is very important, the timings of it, okay? And I'm going to do another video based on timings, kind of the amounts that we need and timings. I'll go into detail a little bit more on that video. But more about the things that you didn't know about ground reaction forces on this. So the second force that you may not know too much about from our ground reaction forces is anterior posterior force. I'm going to refer to it as AP force. I will also refer to it in layman's terms as toe to heel force or heel to toe force, okay? And I'm creating that force underneath each foot. So there's a separate force value, which I'm going to be getting. I'm going to be getting some power in this anterior posterior force from my trail foot, some power and ability to move from my lead foot. Combine them, there's going to essentially help me move in a direction and help me create torque. So underneath my lead foot, if I was to take a point in the downswing, okay, and this will be around sort of just part way down, not just before, anywhere from between top and halfway down. Part way down the downswing, I'm going to be in maximum force pushing towards the camera, slightly away from the camera. So I'm going to say 11 o'clock on this clock card, okay? So 11 o'clock as I coin it, I brought that out in COVID. That was years of study and research that from the clock card I demonstrated to the world that the pushing towards 11 o'clock aids your ability, because now we've got this ground reaction force towards 5 o'clock, is going to aid my ability to move back and away from the golf ball. So essentially, my ability to thrust, so if I push towards my heel too hard underneath my trail foot, and I've got this force towards my toe from my trail foot force, this ground reaction in this direction, this is going to create a thrusting motion of my right side or trail side of my pelvis. And equally, if I'm pushing towards my toe underneath my lead foot and I've got this ground reaction towards my heel, essentially that's going to help me thrust away from the golf ball, right? So thrust is essentially powered by anterior posterior, toe to heel or heel to toe force, okay? So bear that in mind. If you're struggling from an early thrusting and a very excessive thrusting motion, which is changing the plane of the swing and bringing that club down in quite a compromised position this way, and you're again doing that late in the downswing as well, so then the handle's moving up and then starting to create all sorts of delivery problems, that anterior posterior, toe to heel, heel to toe force is essentially powering that thrusting move that you might want to remove from your golf swing. Now, everybody does thrust, the ability to thrust. We've just got to orientate the body and especially the pelvis so that it thrusts in the right direction. So anterior posterior helps us essentially thrust towards and away from the golf ball. It also helps us create torque. Now there's torque in two different planes. Now, if I was to take this kind of overhead plane here, okay, and look at it from ceiling downwards, this AP force from both feet, okay, is going to contribute to turning this disc, or imagine this is kind of like a merry-go-round going round. So in my downswing, if I'm creating heel direction force, toe ground reaction force underneath my trail, you can see what that force is going to create around this right side of this disc or trail side of this disc. And then if I'm pushing towards the camera and the ground reaction is away, I've then got this force in this direction. So this coupling effect of both trail and lead, if I had a bottle of fizzy drink, soft drink, and I twisted it open, I've got my finger and my thumb. The finger's working in this direction, the thumb is working in the opposite direction. I've got this coupling effect helping spin this disc. So my ability to rotate away from the golf ball and rotate towards and past and beyond even target is AP force powered, and my turn ability is essentially really the amount that I can move is essentially controlled and powered by my AP toe to heel, heel to toe force, okay? Also, if I stand in this down the line position, golf posture position, and I position my center of mass, I'm going to go a bit closer to the camera, in its appropriate position here. If I'm pushing towards my heel, so heel to toe anterior AP force, pushing towards my heel, and I've got a toe towards direction, that's going to power my body and give me an ability to rise up and unflex or extend or come out of front bend and go into kind of almost back bend. My ability to bend forwards and backwards is powered by AP force, especially if I'm starting to create a lot of it, an excessive amount underneath my trail, okay? Also, if I turn this way, so now you're at the target, the camera looking back from the target at me. If I'm pushing forwards underneath my lead foot, okay, and the ground reaction is now going back towards my heel, this disc, my ability to move into front bend this way is powered by that lead foot force. Now we know that we're creating more, okay, underneath that lead foot, and it needs to be as much as 2 if not 3 times more force underneath our lead foot, which will then overpower and help you move back into front bend in your downswing. Very, very powerful force. Not to underestimate that force, and certainly what you can do using the clock card is timing your forces. Okay, you won't know unless you get them measured on a 3D force plate how much you're creating. But if I go to top of backswing and then create a downswing pushed forwards towards 11 o'clock early downswing, I'm beginning to get a feel for how much and when I'm creating that toe to heel AP force underneath my lead foot. Very important. Okay, so last but not least, vertical force, the big one. We've been measuring vertical force for decades. We've got portable mats. All of the force plate systems measure vertical force. It's only the 3D force plate systems that measure medial, lateral and anterior posterior force as well. But every plate essentially measures vertical force. So we push down into the ground, primarily underneath our lead foot. Up to 70% can come from your lead foot. We push down a total amount through both feet, over 2 times our body. Some of the fastest on the planet are creating 2.5 times their body weight as a value. So these guys are pretty heavy. Let's take 100 kilos, multiply that by 2.5. We're now 250 kilos of force going into the ground. That's a lot of force. So that essentially is going to aid your ability to rise. And pelvis rise is a big deal in the golf swing, especially as you come up into impact of the pelvis. And we can see this, and I'll play a video here of an elite player. Let's take a professional player here from the tour and let's have a look at his pelvis rise. So that was Rory McIlroy and his pelvis rise coming into impact, powered by vertical force. Now, we need a lot of it, but we need it at the right time. Now, this is really, really important, this bit of information. And don't literally save this video, share this with friends that you know. But look, this shaft, when it's at vertical point on the downswing, that's when you want to be at peak force, pushing down through that lead foot, because force precedes motion. If it happens any later, and I see lots of amateur golfers, and most of you that are watching this, you're going to be down here somewhere when you're at peak. Now, the problem is you haven't got enough time to move and to get the effects and benefits from that force. That force is powering you, but you've got no more time to power and move up. So this is the best players on the planet are doing it here. Even the fastest are doing it before that. So ideally you want it here, especially with driver, shaft vertical. If it's a tad later with iron, I don't mind. But if you want to get speed out to the club, if you want rise up of the pelvis coming into impact, and you essentially want to pull on the grip and move the hand path, bend it up, in and around, and get this head to kick forwards, you better be doing that vertical force on point. And the slowest players that I measure, they either have a low value or they're late with their timings. Now, we've got a million videos out there that you could watch about creating more vertical force, but this one is the one that you need to save, because you need to understand when to peak it, because nobody talks about the peak and when you should be at maximum down and heavy, the state of heavy, and maximum down in the downswing. So vertical force aids our ability to rise, but if I create more force underneath my lead foot, essentially that's going to get my lead side moving up higher than my trail side. So vertical force aids my ability to side tilt. So we know we need that medial lateral force to power this disc, as you can see, but also I want vertical force to power it. So that combination of the push off the trail and push up off the lead, or push down and motion away from the lead side foot up, this ability and torque and our ability to side tilt is powered by our vertical force. So we need it, and we can get up to 70% underneath our lead foot. Now, what do I do to train that? I've used these for years. For over a decade, I've been chopping up tennis balls. Get some old or used tennis balls on eBay, chop them up. They're absolutely brilliant. Foam pool noodle. So I've chopped a piece of noodle. This is like 2 inches long. I've then sliced it in half, and I placed it. I quite like that because it's got this kind of shape on it that allows me to put it under the front of my foot. Now, what I do underneath my lead foot is I place that underneath the balls of the feet, okay? The balls of the feet. Get it underneath the ball of the big toe and across the metatarsal heads, the balls of the feet, across the line of the balls of the toes. So I'm going to place that there underneath my lead foot, and I'm going to go up to top of backswing. I'm then going to power down, and I'm going to push my knee forwards over my laces, and I'm going to power down into that foam noodle there and that sponge, and I'm going to then coming into impact. So I'm about halfway down here. Shaft's going to be vertical. I'm going to rise up and deliver and push up that lead side higher than my trail side. So I've got some tilt across my pelvis and essentially got some tilt across my shoulder line. What I will add about vertical force is that, yes, we talked about how much you push down, and that value being as much as 2.5 times as a percentage of your body weight of force going into the ground, and up to 70% coming from your lead foot of that total value. I also want to sort of bring to your attention the importance of actually getting light, because when you're creating maximum force, you're heavy, okay? But that also depends on how light that you've got. Now, you might say, light? What do you mean? Well, on the force plates, I measure the fastest players at the top of their backswing, just as they start down just past top of backswing. They're at their lightest state because they are in free fall. They are stretched. The arms have gone up. The arms have moved in 2 planes across and up the chest. The spine has come out of front bend. It's gone into a bit of side tilt. The pelvis is in position and turn, and we're turned and stretched, and our arms have gone right round the back of our head. And some of the longest players, they go back round the clock and go on plane on the other side of the body. So they're up here, okay? And they are super light. I'm just going to start the downswing a little bit. They're super light here because they're in free fall. So how quick can you go down from the top of the backswing? Not how much, how quick. Now that will mean that you are essentially unweighting, getting light. I call unweighting, I describe an analogy. If I had a lift or an escalator and I took it up to floor 40, okay? Well, if I took it up another 10 floors, I've given it a longer, it's now higher, I've taken it up higher up the building to essentially, if I cut the cables at that point, I'm 10 floors higher to come back down again. So I'm creating a longer path, a higher position to essentially use gravity plus my ability to accelerate and explode downwards quickly. I unweight, I'm light, I'm in free fall, okay? And then boom, I land and get heavy. So we want to be light, we want to get to the top, we want to be at this kind of P4 position here, top of backswing, and then boom, boom, and accelerate down. Now, you can use 2 pool noodles, or one underneath your lead foot, one underneath your trail, or just one under your lead foot if you really want to. I'm going to use this underneath my lead foot. I'm going to go up to the top, and then, and that unweighting, that getting light then heavy. Just before I got heavy, I was light, I was in free fall, and then bang, I landed and pumped the ground underneath my lead foot. So unweighting and weighting or reweighting is very important, light to heavy. Essentially, we actually go start of the backswing, heavy, top of backswing, light, just past halfway down, heavy, impact, light. So we move through these phases of heavy and light multiple times during the swing. Now, I teach lots of players online, and I've got an online academy, and I do subscription programs, and I work with players with their ground reaction forces, although they don't have equipment to measure. Now, I've also worked with a company in Germany to develop an app that does predicted vertical forces, and we're 95% accurate with those forces against force plates, and the best, most expensive force plates on the planet. So you can measure your vertical forces on a mobile phone now, and that's the Motion to Coach app. So head over to Motion to Coach, find them on Instagram, they're on YouTube as well. You can see some of my stuff that I've done in presentations for them. But that's a brilliant app to measure vertical forces, and like I say, 95% accurate on a mobile phone. And believe me, it's less than the price of a couple of pints of beer. So you can get vertical forces for a very, very small price per month. So vertical force is very important. So we've got our 3 forces. We've got our lateral forces, side to side. We've got our forwards and backwards, anterior, posterior forces. We've got our vertical forces, okay? Now, if I move this disc in 3 dimensions, I'm moving this way, I'm moving this way, I'm moving this way. I've now moved into a position of impact 3-dimensionally to create angular momentum. I'm not just moving in one plane, I'm moving in 3 different planes of motion because I'm bending back, I'm rotating around, I'm side tilting into position, I'm at impact where I've rotated my key segments around, I'm in front bend in those segments, I'm in side tilt, I can get into that wonderful impact position that we see to help you deliver consistent shots. But also when I power up really fast, I can get this force and start to create force on the handle, our other contact point. And if I create force at the right time and have my hands at peak speed, and then at that point begin to rotate the handle the right way, aided by ground reaction forces, I'm going to race that club. I'm going to get the head to whip forwards as I pull the handle up, back and around with a straighter arm, not a bent chicken wing arm. So I'm doing this through power up through the body, through rotation, tilt, turn and bend abilities, bend and extend abilities. Boom, I'm here and I'm going to be able to pull the grip up, back and around, and that's going to kick the head and help me create speed. So we need ground reaction forces for consistency. We need ground reaction forces for speed and power. There's going to be lots of instructional videos coming out this season and going into as I've reignited my YouTube channel again. Also, I love gadgets and technology, so there's loads of reviews and I've got some really cool equipment reviews coming up. As you can see, there's many gadgets in this room. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed that and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, please share, and subscribe to the channel by clicking the bell icon, and then any new video that I post, you will be one of the first to watch it.